So I don't know where to start. What am I grateful for? Oh, it's too many things. Over the years, you accumulate a lot of things to be grateful for. And I guess the one that I'm most grateful for is I started programming in 1968. And in 68, I think I was in grade 11 here in Toronto at William Lyon Mackenzie Collegiate. Anybody went to Mackenzie? No? No. Anyway, I had a physics teacher in grade, actually I started programming in grade 10, my mistake, 1967. I had a physics teacher in grade 10 who got into computers. So back then, he got 3 time-sharing terminals that he put in a little room. And for some reason, he gave me the opportunity to play with these. So it was a digital equipment PDP-10. You probably don't know any of these things. It's way beyond your time, before your time. I had access to a General Electric Mark II or III that ran BASIC as its operating system. And the third one was a system that ran APL, which is a mathematical language for programming. And I don't know if any of these are familiar to you, but I was like a kid in a candy store back then, in grade 10, having the opportunity not just to program a computer, but 3 totally different types of computers, 3 different languages, and very few other people had that opportunity. I decided by the time I got to grade 11 that I was going to become a professor of computer science. And so having made that decision back then, you can understand when I meet other people who don't know what to do with their life, how alien that is to me, okay? Because I knew back then, it was grade 11, what I would do. And so I then went on and graduated high school. I came to U of T in computer science in 71, graduated in 75 in the computer science program here. It was a fantastic experience that I had, and happy to, for any of you who did computer science here, to talk about what it was back then. And took a vow of poverty because I knew that professors didn't really make a whole lot of money. So I graduated with my bachelor's in 75, went to Carnegie Mellon University in 75 to do a PhD, and discovered a couple of things. Oh, by the way, and I got into artificial intelligence here at U of T before I went to Carnegie Mellon, and just my experience there as a PhD student just reinforced my fascination with the whole field. And I ended up being a professor there of computer science and robotics, and got there in 75, didn't leave until 91 when I came back here to assume a chair. And so one of the things I discovered is that you can make money in computer science being a professor, because along the way, I have co-founded a few companies, one back in the 80s, which is an AI company that we took public on NASDAQ, and another one I started, which was an online retail company back in 1993 that we grew to over 150 people here in Toronto. We're probably the first outsource online retail software and services company, perhaps in the world. I haven't found anybody who was earlier, and had a great fun doing all that. And then, if I may begin to close off some of the journeys I have been along, when I stepped away from my company here in 2010, I look back at my research career, which was focused in 2 areas. One is in the whole area of planning and scheduling in AI, and the second in knowledge representation and reasoning. And I was focused on how you take that technology and apply it to complex organizations. So throughout my history, I've been interested in how organizations operate and the role of technology in enabling organizations to be more efficient, more effective, et cetera, et cetera. So when I stepped back into academia in 2010, I looked around and said, what type of organization should I focus on? And I decided at that point that I'd focus on cities. And that's when I started reaching out to City of Toronto and other organizations to focus my attention more on cities and the problems that cities are facing. And in 2015, I had the opportunity to bend the ear of Merrick Gertler. Merrick and I, he's the president of University of Toronto. He and I traveled to Mumbai together, and I won't tell this story, but nevertheless, it began me on the journey to the creation of the School Cities, which I co-created with some other people here, and ran the research arm of the School Cities from the beginning 2018 to about 3 years later, and then focused more on the Urban Data Research Center after that. So here I am. How many years from 1967? I don't know. Too big a number. I'm at the end of my career in some sense because I'm now on sabbatical, and then I semi-retire a year from now. And so when you ask, what's the question? What do I have to be grateful for? When I look back at my career, I'm grateful for how life has allowed me to pursue a variety of things, my interests, and successfully pursue it and reach this particular point, still alive. So I'm grateful. So what I'm going to talk to you about is a Canadian Urban Data Catalogue that a group of us within the Urban Data Research Center have been working on. This includes Bart Gadjarowicz, who's actually the project lead, and Lester Liu, who does all of the heavy lifting when it comes to programming for it. So let me talk a little bit. Let's see if I can get this working. No, that didn't work. There we go. I'm going to talk a little bit about what our mission is. Our mission is focused. Obviously, what we want to do is help cities achieve better, more efficient, more effective, sustainable, resilient cities through the use of data. And the big problem that we're focusing on, and there are many problems, obviously, and you're working on a variety of those. The one that, given my background in knowledge representation and reasoning, has focused on this issue of interoperability of data across the city, the various services, and also with external stakeholders. And so how can we achieve greater levels of sharing of data within and outside the city? And to do that, we have been developing ontologies. I've been developing ontologies since 1977. I continue to develop ontologies, and in addition to that, we apply them to different urban situations. We've had a few projects with the City of Toronto over the last 3 years that over the last 7, 8 years that I'm happy to talk about, but I'm not really talking about that today. And we have also moved a number of these ontologies down the path of becoming international standards within the International Standards Organization, the International Electrotechnical Committee, which together form what's called the Joint Technical Committee for Technical Standards. So I'm heavily involved in the whole standardization process of city data. Again, not a topic that I'm going to be covering today. But before I get to the topic, I just want to talk a little bit about the objectives that we have within the Urban Data Research Center. Today, I'll be talking about the Canadian Urban Data Catalogue, and I'll give you the motivation for why we're doing this. We're also working on standards for semantic interoperability of urban data, which I mentioned. We also have built a city digital twin, or I guess it's a generic city digital twin, which can be applied to any city. where we represent knowledge about the city for a variety of applications using the standards and ontologies we've created. We also have developed trusted urban data governance models, one in particular, which has already been adopted by the City of Toronto. And also we have aspirations. Well, we have developed some tools for management of urban data and tools for the analysis and interpretation of urban data. Yes, we do use LLMs, but it is a difficult journey for us, separating the hype from reality when working with the type of data that we work with. Okay, so let me get into the Canadian Urban Data Catalogue. Why would anybody create a catalog of urban data sets? Well, it's very simple. When we started out, we would talk to different agencies, cities, private organizations, et cetera, about creating a platform where they could deposit all of their data sets. So imagine this one open platform where all the data sets from across Canada, has anything to do with urban, rural, whatever, can be deposited. And the immediate feedback was no. Okay. Everybody out there, government or otherwise, is creating their own data platform for data. Okay. Didn't matter who we talked to. Oh yeah, we have a project underway. We're creating a platform for data. So there was never going to be a single location in which all of urban data can be deposited. And when you take into account the issue of individual data, indigenous data, security, all the different licenses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it was just too many hurdles to jump over in order to get to the point that you could have a central repository. So we pulled back on that and we said, well, we don't really need a repository. Why? Because the problem that we're trying to solve is awareness. That is to say, when we communicated to people across Canada, nobody knew what data was available. Okay. The search for relevant data was a challenge. And so we said, why don't we tackle the awareness problem? And that is to create a catalog. Doesn't have to contain the data sets, but it catalogs what data sets exist across Canada. Okay. And then if you, as a user of this catalog, find a data set that you think may be relevant, the information would be there for you to contact them and see if it really is available or what the restrictions are on usage and things of that nature. So that's really the focus, is let's at least have a centralized catalog that is open, that you can find the data regardless of who owns it, where it exists, regardless of the nature of the licenses, whether it contains data about individuals or indigenous data or whatever, you would know that that exists. And then you have to go through the process of negotiating with the owners of that data to see if you can have access. Doesn't guarantee you have access, but at least you know that there's data out there. So that was the rationale why we created the Canadian Urban Data Catalogue, because it is exactly that, an open catalog composed of rich metadata descriptions of urban and non-urban data sets. It's available for anybody to search. It's an open catalog. So if you go to data.urbandatacenter.ca, you can start using the catalog today. It is designed to be a gateway for discovering data sets. It can serve as a repository. So I often talk about orphaned data sets. So imagine the number of data sets that have been created just in academia across Canada that disappear the moment somebody gets their bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD that was sitting on their laptop, and 5 years down the road, they get a new laptop. What happens to that data set? Well, I just wiped it. If I'm good, I wipe the computer. If I'm not good, I just get rid of the computer with everything about me on it. And it contains catalog entries for open data sets, closed data sets, and web services. So that's really the key thing that we're trying to do. As part of the development of this catalog, we had to ask the question, what exists there from a standards point of view to document the metadata for a catalog entry. What's already out there that we can use to represent information about a data set, so that you can actually find what you need and have a good understanding of what it contains. And so we did a review of the literature, the paper on the previous page, which has been accepted for publication. This is an earlier draft. It's not really up to date. We did a review. There are hundreds of metadata attributes for data sets that you could possibly choose from. And if you wanted to go and write the metadata out for a data set that you have, I don't know about you, but I would not know where to start, okay? Because there's just so many different things out there that have been written about. And so we took it upon ourselves to review the literature to identify the different types of metadata. The types that we identified out there include things like content, topic, title, description, keywords, language, etc. Access information such as location, format, license, which I can't even see the rest of my words because it's covered by the picture here. Hang on, let me get rid of that. Machine understandable access, APIs, etc. And now I'm having problems. There we go. Ownership, author, publisher, maintainer, community permissions if required. Provenance, when it was created, what versions exist, how do the versions relate to each other. Temporal geospatial information and the granularity of it, and statistical information about the number of entities, properties, things of that nature. And let me just get something away. And then quality information, whatever quality means. So we wanted to capture these 7 different categories of information about a data set, but we were still challenged by how do you present that to somebody who's going to actually catalog a particular data set? You know, do we just sort of put a list up and say, here are 100 or 60, whatever attributes, go and fill in whatever you feel like? We decided to take a bit different approach. What we did was we decided to create a metadata maturity model. And if you don't know about maturity models, the capability maturity model for software is a model that was developed back at Carnegie Mellon University when I was there. And what's funny about it is they asked me to be on the technical board for it, and I turned them down. Probably one of the mistakes I made in my life, but that's okay. Anyway, the capability maturity model has these levels. And the higher the level, the more mature an organization you are from the perspective of your processes for producing software. So the lowest level, level 0 in the CMM capability maturity model is really, you don't have any processes. You just hack away until something works. And then level 1 may introduce requirements, level 2, you know, other things that are necessary for producing good software. Our approach of a maturity model was based upon what it is that people can easily get their hands on and what it is that people need to have. And so we started off by reviewing the literature on how people search for data sets. So there's a whole literature out there on what people search for, what keywords are used, what other information is used, et cetera. And so our level 1 of our maturity model are all of the attributes that have to do with supporting the searching for a data set that has been documented in the literature. Level 2 then focused on the next most important information that people were looking for, which was access to that data, ownership, things of that nature. Level 3 focused on content, including IDs for the content, language, whether the data set contains individuals or indigenous data. Level 4 focused on provenance of the data set, versioning, linkages to other versions. Level 5 focuses on more specific indigenous data management policies. And level 6 focuses on stats and quality of the data in the data set. So we believe there's a relationship between the amount of information, the information that's available, the metadata available about a data set, and the levels. So we should be able to find for any particular data set a higher probability of level 1 information being available versus level 2 versus level 3 versus level 4. And so that guided us, these levels guided us in the development of the software that underlies our open data catalog. In addition, the metadata attributes that we have included in our system conform to FAIR principles. And in particular, what that means is the information that we represent allows somebody who wants to do a fair compliance analysis of a data set can find the information in the catalog entry. So we make it possible to do fair compliance analysis. OCAP, we also provide relevant data to satisfy OCAP analyses. I don't know if you're familiar with OCAP, but the First Nations Information Governance Center came out with OCAP guidelines or principles a number of years ago, and it's with respect to the ownership, control, access, and possession of Indigenous data. And so we, in our metadata model, also include information relevant to OCAP principles. And finally, DCAT, the Dataset Catalog standard developed in Europe, is also consistent with what we have, and in particular, DCAT is a subset of what we have in our metadata model. Now, what have we been doing since we created this platform, defined the maturity model, implemented the maturity model, and you'll see what that means in a moment, into our platform? For the last 2 years or so, we've done a number of things. So we know, ever see the movie Field of Dreams? I don't know if you're familiar with, yeah, okay, thank you. What happened, who's the star of Field of Dreams? He's, okay. Somebody look up the star of Field of Dreams one. Sorry? Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner, thank you very much, okay. Anyway, this movie is very interesting because he's a corn farmer living somewhere in Nebraska or someplace where they grow corn, okay? And he starts hearing things. And what he hears is, if you build it, they will come, okay? And it turns out that his father was a baseball player, a professional baseball player, and he died early. And so this is all about the relationship or lack of a relationship with his father. But he keeps hearing the sound, if you build it, they will come. So the whole idea in the end, if you've not seen the movie, I'm going to tell you what happens in the end. He builds this baseball field in the middle of his cornfield. And these ghosts of players from the 1920s or 30s or whatever come out. And they start playing baseball there. It's a beautiful movie. If you like to cry at movies, this is a good tearjerker. Anyway, it was clear to us that if we built the Canadian Urban Data Catalogue, put it up on the web, that nobody would come. So I don't know what the problem is, whether I don't have the right script writer for my initiative here, or nobody's listening. But anyway, so what we did to begin the population of the Dataset catalog is to conduct panels. We ran a panel on transportation and a second one on housing. We got people, academics, people from academia, people from cities, people from industry, to be on this panel and talk about what are the nature of the problems that they're facing with respect to trying to solve in transportation, the same with housing, and what the data do they need to actually do something about it, and what the data gaps were. So there are actually 2 reports on the urban data Research Center website that document the deliberations of that panel. And with that, we then start hiring graduate students to be curators. And so over the last 2 years, we've hired a number of graduate students to curate, and there's approximately 1,300 data sets that have been cataloged in the Canadian Urban Data Catalogue. And our goal is within hopefully a year or two to get up to 10,000. And why do I say that, or why do I believe that? I think it's on the next screen, you'll find out. But as you can see on this screen, the data sources are, there's a lot of data sets in transportation, data sets in housing, homelessness, environment, bylaws, culture and tourism, and their sources spread across a number of organizations, including the ones that you see on the screen. But to ramp up the population of the urban data catalog, there are a couple of things we're pursuing. One is we're trying to get the word out there that it exists. We want to get the word out to people in academia who are developing data sets and have nowhere to place them, and they can place them within our catalog because it does have a repository capability. But what we've also been doing is building bridges to standard platforms like CCAN, Dataverse, Socrata, et cetera. CCAN is the first one that is operational. And so what we're doing is we're beginning the automatic downloading of catalog entries from any city, any municipality, any urban related platform that's implemented in CCAN. And so hopefully that will supercharge the speed with which we are increasing our data set coverage. And then over time, we're increasing the number of bridges to other open data platforms that exist out there. So that's one effort. Going back to what I said before about the first effort, is reaching out to academia and other organizations. That is something that we actually need help doing, is to, over whatever social media is appropriate, getting the word out to people in various organizations that this exists so that they could use it, but also add data sets to it. Oops. This is the homepage from the Canadian Urban Data Catalogue. It's quite simple. You can type in some keywords, or you can go to an advanced search. And what pops up in the advanced search, and you'll see here maturity level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It allows you to search across any of the metadata attributes across any of the maturity levels, so that you can do a more focused search than just a simple keyword. And so we believe that that is very powerful in trying to very quickly narrow down what you're looking for. Catalog search does what you would normally expect. It comes back with a set of entries that'll tell you how many come from each of the sources, organizations on the side. And then if you click on any of these, it comes up with, I know that's a little difficult to read, but it comes up with the catalog entry. What we're looking at, I think, is maturity level 2, where it lists access information, access category, open, location, data service if available, owner, contact point, publisher email, et cetera, et cetera. And this is another example. In this case, it's a web service from Geotab. And this is maturity level 1, so it provides some basic information about that. And you can click on the other maturity levels to get the attributes, the metadata attributes that are appropriate for each of the metadata maturity levels. Let's see. Okay, so this is up and running. As I said, there's 1,300 data sets there. You can go to it anytime. If you want to create entries, just register. Registration's free, nothing happens. Nothing is required of you, and you can start adding things to the catalog. We did an analysis of how much of each category of metadata is in the 1,300 entries so far, and you can see there's more information about access than there is about content, and then temporal geospatial information comes up next, ownership next, quality next, provenance next, statistical next. Question is whether I believe any of this. Let's see the next one. And then in terms of completion of the maturity levels, maturity level 1, as we had hoped, has the greatest level of completion. That's the search level. Maturity level 2 is then next with access, ownership, etc. Content for maturity level 3 is then next, as one would expect. Not a great deal of provenance information. No information related to Indigenous information for the data sets that we found that have been put in so far. And there is some statistical and quality information that's available. So I'm at the end, and you're invited to use Canadian Urban Data Catalogue to find things, to deposit things, etc. We even invite you to become a curator. If there's an area that you specialize, whether it is homeless, healthcare, public housing, transportation, we'd love to have you, work with us and continue to add more content to the catalog. And of course, we invite you to add your own data sets if you want to make them, if you want to create awareness of their existence, and or even if you want to deposit the data set there because you don't really have a good place to store it in the long term. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Sure. Want me to end?
Folks online, if you have questions, please type anything into the chat, and you can ask them over the Zoom call.
Thanks for the presentation. So at the beginning, you talked about standardization, and I was curious if there were efforts to standardize formats across different municipalities you'd seen, or also efforts to standardize the licenses, because I've noticed a lot of, like, every level or a city has their own sort of slightly different version of the open government license. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I got this. So I've been trying to introduce standards across cities for many years. It's taking many years to get to the point that they actually understand what I'm talking about. So I used to talk about ontologies. They had no clue what I was talking about. Now they have some idea of what I'm talking about, even if it's wrong. But at least they've heard the word. The whole notion of standards across municipalities, across Canada, or even across provinces, or even across the federal government's areas of responsibility is a problem. And the problem rests, in my view, and now I'm going to give you a very personal view of what the issue is. The federal government and the provincial governments are more of a bureaucratic entity as opposed to an entity that provides leadership in areas that, in this particular case, is of technical nature. So when you knock on the door, and for example, I speak to people at the federal level, and they have money for federal bureaucrats to travel to a variety of standards meetings around the world. So if you want to go to Africa or you want to go to Europe or whatever, the money's there. If you actually want to fund the development of standards in Canada, the money isn't there. That technical leadership is lacking. Now that, I don't want to make that a blanket statement. There are people who are concerned with this area. And for example,